4-7.
Rojikari also moved.
Alicia Fink, I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to approve our study session date?
Yes. Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mrs. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
With that, our motion passes. Thank you all very much for the flexibility and availability. I'm looking really forward to that session, since we're not always together when we go through this. With that, we'll move on to item G5, request approval of our sole source for Kids at Hope. So the sole source vendors in my experience, have been approved, around annually. And we've got some additions after we already approved some of these last year. So they're supposed to be few and far between. So this is the time that we're going to receive information as far as the justification on why they're being presented to the board. And then we'll decide what to do.
And I'd like to invite our CFO, Mr. Manley, and our procurement manager, Sarah, to share with you why we have several, and they'll take the stand there for a little bit. There's 3.
Absolutely. Excuse me. President Trujillo, governing board members, superintendent, cabinet, and community members. While we tried very hard to capture all of the sole source procurement needs, invariably we may identify others throughout the year that, in the best interest of the district, we need to do additional due diligence as these arise and bring them to the board. Should they potentially rise above the procurement thresholds? In discussing this with 2 professionals, we may anticipate similar due diligence needs in the future. For example, last school year, we had the bulk of our sole source vendors approved on the 30th of June. A couple of other times throughout the year in August, we added a couple of additional sole source vendors based on the need for those due diligence. And so the vendors before you are going to likely go over the quoting thresholds requiring additional due diligence and are no longer identified as being under a cooperative contract. And if there's any questions specific to Kids at Hope, which is the current agenda item, we'd be happy to answer them, or the other 2 vendors that are on the sole source potential list.
I have a question about the sole source. What's the threshold?
So there are 2 really major thresholds. The first one is anything over $10,000 that requires quotes. Depending on the vendor and what they're offering, sometimes a sole source vendor makes the most sense. The other is the threshold is $100,000 if they're not under a state contract. And we have, for example, item G7, curriculum associates. They are going to breach that $100,000 procurement level, and they are no longer under an identifiable cooperative contract.
So for the Kids at Hope, it's correct to assume that there was no other bids?
Yeah, so whenever we took a look at what the procurement was for those pieces, we did reach out to a couple other, I'm going to call them community programs. That's not really how Kids at Hope fits into that scheme on how, I shouldn't say scheme, that framework for presenting that type of offering to our district. So we were able to find one other vendor that had something similar but different, so different that we wanted to pursue this sole source avenue. And then we had some others that didn't even respond to our ask for quotes. So that's and so this would be for this year. And this, I'm not going to make any assumptions, but should we continue with Kids at Hope, we could have them on the sole source list and continue with them for like their posters and their everyone is a 10 things that go along with the Kids at Hope program. So that would explain the Kids at Hope one. And also these came about after the last governing board meeting and after we had our sole source lists approved, the big one back in the previous board meeting.
Okay, I just want, sorry.
Oh, sorry. So these needs came up after we had adopted the other sole source vendors, the big list. And again, should we approach those thresholds with other vendors and we can't go through the normal due diligence process, we may, if those are identified, bring those at future board meetings. Am I not? Sorry, I'll get closer.
For curriculum associates, have we worked with them in the past for the iReady training? We
Yeah,
have,
so yeah,
oh, yeah.
and this is
Okay.
for
Oh.
professional development
Just,
that goes along with that. curriculum.
Yeah, I've seen them in action last year. It was
Sorry, hold on. We're on Kids at
Oh.
Hope.
because we had talked about curriculum. Okay,
I was giving a quick overview of how the sole source process might work, but specific to Kids at Home is the current agenda.
So with the
item.
Kids at Hope, I just want my colleagues to know that during the board agenda prep, I did ask for this item to be tabled until we had a discussion, and that did not happen. So I guess we're gonna have this discussion publicly. So can you please present to us why Kids at Hope is what you want to move forward with?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Bueno and Vice President Trujillo. Kids at Hope allows us to bring a culture where our students are able to be, just like our students' focused outcome governance, they are the priority. And in this case, it's around the belief that all students are capable of success, no exceptions. It also takes you with connecting and making sure that every student has an adult that they connect with at the school site so that they're able to really share not just the academic piece, but other interests so that they feel seen and valued. And lastly, we have the time travel where we are able to provide those opportunities. And so why Kids at Hope? Because it's a framework. It's not a program. It's something that allows us as a district to bring those elements, and it allows each school to be able to implement it and have it in a way that it's meaningful to them. Why Kids at Hope? Because this district had already been a Kids at Hope district in the past. There were several schools, and right now I'll highlight Magnet as one that has been really pushing the idea of making sure that there's this culture that really surrounds around our students being the ones that really know that we believe in them and that they are going to achieve and that they are going to be successful and that we're going to remove those barriers, including language around that. So Kids at Hope allows us to really bring that culture to a space where the student feels emotionally safe, where they have a sense of belonging, and then they're able to really spread their wings in a way where they can really be seen and heard. It also stretches out to our adults, where they are able to be that caring adult, and that framework brings the 4 ACEs, where we have one of those ACEs being the ACE of Hearts, which is the parent, and also having the opportunity to have the other caring adults. I've talked to Rick Miller, and he is prepared to come out on August 22nd, if we so wish, so that he can give something that gives a little bit more detail around Kids at Hope, and also answer any kind of questions that our board may have. I've experienced it in the past as a principal for both the elementary and the middle school, and I have seen really great gains as part of a culture and that sense of belonging.
So how does this program differ from the culture that you're instilling in the district?
Well, it's around that. It's always been a part, the elements have always been a part of it. If you remember, very first introduction to the district was around Believe, Connect, and time travel. This is more formalizing and being able to bring the resources that help us with the framing of what the culture will be. And so it's not that it's different, it's that it continues to be that extension. It's something that I've had an opportunity to bring from different place to place because I know how it has been able to support our students and their families in really having that connection with the school.
I don't agree. I think that the culture that you need to instill here in the district is that our staff are respected, our families are respected, and I'm just not seeing that. And I don't have faith that this program is what's going to automatically make our teachers feel respected and honored. So I do not support this program.
Okay, we just had the opportunity to have the new teachers be a part of our Kids at Hope framework, and they were very motivated and very inspired about having a cohesive way to address our students. And it does fold in that respect and that holding that dignity and integrity at all times, regardless of what our students bring to the table. So I think it couples.
Respectfully, until you can do that to all our staff, I think once you start with the adults, I think it does trickle down to the classroom. So I encourage you to start with the staff, because I can tell you right now that they do not feel that way. And HR has a lot of responsibility too, to make sure that our staff feels that this place is warm and welcoming.
Yes, and I take that feedback personally as well, and for sure we'll continue to work towards making sure that our staff also feels respected, valued, and seen, because that's very important for the culture that we have.
My question is, why these sole source justification forms aren't signed ever?
That
Like
would be
whose
overview.
responsibility is that? And I've never been asked to sign them, so I'm just wondering why they are presented to the board, not signed.
So it's my understanding that we'd ask for, we wouldn't sign them until the board approved them for these agenda
Who's
items.
we?
Me, I was going to ask, where I wasn't going to sign an agreement until,
For all of them or just for items that fall under your department? Just
for sole
wondering.
source, that would
Yes.
be my department. Yes, ma'am.
So all of them are your department because it's a sole source.
Yeah, procurement.
Got it. Mhm.
But I see Sarah's name on here.
My department would sign.
Your
it's being
department, not
procured.
specific
Yes,
to
ma'am.
you.
So my reserves are just that the documentation, not the documentation, the wording that goes with this is that the governing board is really held responsible for making sure all the due diligence has been done, that other vendors were looked for. And I heard the description earlier. So I wanted more verification of like what else was done. So what I heard was that no other vendors responded to the RFP or whatever that went out for this item.
Right. So this was over $10,000. So we would typically get 3 written quotes. We identified some potential similar frameworks that are sort of similar. Kids at Hope is unique in that the other people that we had reached out to didn't have a similar supplies that the Kids at Hope vendor would provide.
And so just looking at this, I'm assuming that they've got like copyright issues, so we've got to go to them for our printing.
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions?
Just to provide insight in the classroom as a teacher, my previous school, we didn't have full buy-in, not because I can't say it wasn't a framework that was I could say it was a program that wasn't implemented with fidelity. The materials were not purchased for us. And I know that as we brought you on, you did mention these aspects. And from a teacher point of view, if it's something that is going to be implemented with fidelity throughout the years, as you work to build that culture, it's something that I can support. And then I understand why it's a sole source vendor, because again, you're partnering with entity that sort of birthed this Kids at Hope framework that can fit into a sort of justice practice, but again, on our end, we would have to build that to support our students at risk. And so, yeah, you would not be able to purchase these materials for identity that, again, trademarked this framework. It'd be like akin to working with a different coach to teach us about student outcomes focused governance when it's not their idea. So I understand why it's a sole source and just explain to our community that point. And it looks like we're going full throttle with this, and which I appreciate. I would like to our point with the family center. If we're going through with this, I would still like to see measurables and outcomes after the end of the year. And that's if this program comes to fruition at the end of the year, to see what kind of impact this had on our student and teacher culture, to see if we will continue this, should this go forward.
Are these gonna be in Spanish?
I've requested that as part of our interest, the materials for both our students and our staff, because there's both elements. And so I've made that request. I know that I've already made the translation for the Treasure Hunter and the Kids at Hope Pledge. And so my interest is that they are, so that we are able to serve our population the way that we need to.
And where are the posters gonna go?
The posters are included in the classrooms, and they're also in the common areas for especially our treasure hunters. And a lot of this also, our principals would then have the opportunity to share with us where it is that they want them in addition to the classrooms.
Mhm. I would have loved to see kind of some examples really, or even just like the price comparisons for what was supposedly compared online. Any chance those are available, or we've got kind of costs on off memory by chance? For the printing?
Yes, ma'am. So we have, I'll go ahead and share. It was the Be Kind group, and then KOA was the other group that we looked at. And we had a similar but different quote on products from Be Kind. And I'd be happy to share that.
And is that a printing company?
Oh, no, that's a different framework for student assistance.
It's a program. That sounds right.
So again, it's just similar. We don't have numbers for that.
I don't have them offhand, but they were so different that the sole source option made the most sense. So even like the Be Kind group didn't offer the same.
I'm not meaning it
Oh.
that we should have went with them. I just would
Sure.
have loved to see the background
Sure.
work that went into this. That's all. If
Sure, we'd be
that's what
happy
I'm
to share
asked to
that due
approve.
diligence.
Do we have a motion to approve item G5?
Reggie Cario, motion.
Alicia Vink, I second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please have a roll call vote. Mrs. Valencia?
Roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
No.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Yay.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Yes.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Yes.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
No. So which have it? The ayes or the nays?
The ayes.
With that, the motion does pass, and we'll move on to item G6. The sole source justification for time clock plus.
Yes, ma'am. So similar to the preamble that I shared with the other ones, those are all also in place. Just this vendor's previous cooperative contract expired. We identified that after the sole source list was already passed by the governing board. So that vendor was missed on that last requested sole source request. And we do need to pay this vendor's annual license and maintenance cost. We've already invested in the TCP time clock process in the district, and it would be very fiscally and operationally difficult to change how we deal with our time clocks while we're already into this fiscal year.
Do you think you're gonna make the payment in time? It's due August 4th.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there maybe not a position that we've hired for or something, how this got missed?
Oh, well,
I know we've had a lot of transitions. That's why I'm just wondering.
yeah, we've
How-
had a lot,
Or is it-
and we just identified that the contract that we were going to work under was no longer valid.
Hmm.
And how that came to pass, I'm thankful that we discovered that.
So we
I
didn't
don't-
miss it. We just missed it for our meeting?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Got it. And this vendor's on the save contract? Or am I
They,
reading that?
they had expired, so they're no longer under a state contract that we could identify, a cooperative contract.
Oh, okay, that's the part that I had a disconnect with. So once we do this, do they become part of the save contract again?
No, ma'am, they'd be a sole source vendor that we could then use as a sole source contract to pay the bills for TCP.
And then next year, what will that look like?
We could adopt them again as a sole source unless we identify that they're under another cooperative contract, and then we could go forth in either manner.
This process is very hard for me to, it's not hard to understand in general, but it's hard to piece the pieces that went into it, and then consider what the outcomes are once.
Oh, kind of
once-
like the matrix that we're used to, explaining like the procurement process.
So they were on, so does that change like the? I guess my understanding is vendors on the cooperative contracts, we have like better rates for services, items, whatever that is. So what does that look like? What's the price difference?
So there was no identification.
Weird. Okay, that's, I was concerned about that. Okay. All right, hearing any other questions? Hearing no further discussion, do we have a motion to approve item G6 for our time clock?
Jessica Bueno.
Thank you, Mike.
Reggie Carrillo, second.
Hearing no further discussion, may we please have a roll call vote?
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Yes.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Yes.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Yes.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Yes.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Yes, with that, the ayes have it, and we'll move on to item G7. Requesting approval for curriculum associates as a sole source vendor.
Yes, ma'am. So from how I described how the sole source vendors come to be. So this request came in after the last board meeting. There was not a cooperative contract that exists. Based on last school year's expenses for iReady and Curriculum Associates PD, that was well under either threshold for procurement. So if we were to look to get PD for our core curriculum, this would be the mechanism for due diligence that we would use to get PD for our iReady and Curriculum Associates.
When is the iReady training? Should this go through?
Board Member Carrillo, this is for us to provide the coaching with the teachers and the planning around how to use the curriculum and the resources effectively to better meet the needs of our students so that we see the gains that we need in mathematics.
So, yeah, so then, like, is there a kickoff of when to start training for, like, especially our new teachers?
Yes, so this includes training for new teachers as well as training of cohorts at our schools, particularly focused on those areas where our students are performing at the lowest level, so that those teachers are getting added support to help our students perform.
Thank you. I guess what I'm inquiring about is like, just should this go through, is just encouraging anyone who wants to see that training to go, see kind of the iReady training.
This would be available at every school site for any teacher who wants to participate, as well as for those teachers in those grade levels that we're speaking of, where students' performance has been lower than we would expect.
Yes, thank you. I was able to see just one last year, very effective. I loved it. I wish I had it as a teacher. And there was a lot of features that teachers had used. But again, I just keep going back to just, I mean, I know that they've gone a full year with this to see what their feedback has been about it. And then encouraging anybody, any board members here to go see it, should it go through.
Yes, we can always invite people to participate and view the training that's occurring.
Who conducts the training?
Curriculum Associates, the designers of the curriculum, are the people who design the training and provide the training for us.
So then, but who's like, in our department, who's the point of contact that would
Oh,
continue?
Lisa Fryer is our point of contact for the math. And so she will be present with the coaching and the training, again, building capacity for us to make sure that this is occurring across the board.
And what is her title?
She is the curriculum alignment specialist for mathematics.
Thank you.
And this is the iReady training that helps support the state assessment. Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes, that is correct.
Right, hearing no further discussion, do we have a motion to approve item G7 for Curriculum Associates?
Alicia Vink, so moved.
Reggie Carrillo, second.
Thank you. And I have one more question for us, discussion, just for clarification, really. So this is going to be for like the 2023-24 school year? And the date on here says valid through 12/31. That's just the quote on here. It's not services or binding or.
This is professional development for this academic year. However, we're trying to get all of the professional development in ASAP so that our students have lots of time to experience the effective teaching practices that our teachers will be able to use with them. So the training will end before the 31st of December.
Oh, okay. So it is a valid date. Okay. Just as far as I was wondering if we'd be cut off or something, but that's the intention. That's the plan. Okay. That was my last piece of discussion. My apologies. May we please have roll call vote? Mrs. Valencia?
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Ms. Regional Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye. Thank you. With that, our motion passes and we will move on to closing items. Item H1, do we have any board
Thank you.
member requests?
I just have one. If whoever has the agenda, the future agenda item tracker could send it to me, that would be great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Just to go on top of Vice President, SR funding, putting that on our radar is just to just double I don't even know what I'm saying. And just get a or request a presentation about what our ESSER funding looks like. Again, just speaking to our community, what that 2024 cliff looks like and what our plans after that to support whatever contracts may come to end.
I'm sorry, I have one more. If this wasn't in an email in the last couple of weeks, forgive me if it was. If it was, I will find it. But an update on how many certified positions are still unfilled, including if those are going to be filled by long-term subs. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
All right, my board request would be to, I noticed that we have lane awards under one of our co-op contracts. So I would appreciate a quote to finalize now that we've got our board officers and stuff, that at least the board have their same nameplates and stuff to make the board room look presentable. And my request was to have like ones for cabinet to be able to put on the desk so you guys can switch seats and move around. So that way I know you guys aren't at every single meeting, but that way whoever is here has their correct information on there. Because sometimes we do play musical chairs, but have that done at least in the next 60 days. Finally, that would be great. Also, Dr. Vink, what was the date for your event at the library?
August 17th.
Okay. Is there any way we can help support that?
I will let you know soon.
Any further board requests? All right, hearing none, let's go to item H2, future agenda items.
I would like to request that in our August meeting agenda, I would like an action item to receive, discuss, and approve a third-party HR complaint line. And I just want to note, this is the third time that I'm requesting this.
I remember. Thank you very much for sharing that. So the August 22nd meeting. Okay, and then I also had a note for the same. Would like to have, that we would like to have a work study session at that meeting. Is that, my request would be that we have a work study session for maybe about an hour, hour and a half before a normal board meeting to go over the tools that we're gonna need for our evaluation. I believe we've got to get that done in October. So if we had a work study session to decide on the same way we did our last one, just work study session to go over a few tools. And then at the meeting, we'll decide which tool we.
For superintendent evaluation.
Yes, for our
Yeah, I'll
superintendent
double that
evaluation.
too for the superintendent evaluation.
Yes, my apologies. Sweet.
Point of clarification. Current President Trujillo. That was a study session. You requested a study session before next meeting in August to go over the tools needed for the superintendent evaluation, right? Not the board self-evaluation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. I do love that the board values self-evaluation. I'll email my last one because I don't think we need it on an agenda. So I will send that email over and then we can move on from there. Do we have any further future agenda items? Any data requests, presentations? In the future, I think I would like one on our communications plan, hoping we've made some adjustments to it while we've been experiencing this transition of not having. I don't even know actually what's going on right now with communication, so that would be helpful. And that would be my last one. So with that, we'll move on to item I1. Do we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Jessica Bueno, so moved.
Alicia Vinca, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, may we please have a roll call vote to adjourn this evening? Mrs. Valencia.
Yes, roll call for Ms. Jessica Bueno,
Aye.
Mr. Reginald Carrillo,
Aye.
Ms. Erica de la Rosa,
Aye.
Dr. Alicia Vink,
Aye.
and Ms. Carmen Trujillo.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Our meeting is ended. It is 8:15. And our next governing board meeting is scheduled for August the 22nd. And a notice will be posted for the time that our work study session will start and the board meeting will start at 5:15 p.m. following that. Thank you and have a good evening.